we come here to kind of get some of your feedback, get some of your ideas on this project. You know, I don't live in this area. I've been working here for about a couple of years with the resiliency project and other things, and we really want to get an understanding of what your needs are. Because when it comes down to it, like, this is your project, right? This is the community's project. We're just here to help run the numbers, come up with the plans, and help the project get executed. But we really want your feedback from that today, so I'm going to start with that. So getting into it, the goals of the project first is to manage the green space and to treat increasing the stormwater runoff that comes in there. There's a really important piece that open space and green spaces plays in our stormwater runoff. You know, if you go back, 200 years before this area was developed, or 300 years before this area was developed, the water would go in and it would go on the ground, it would go through the forests and the roots and all the systems and everything, and come out very clean. Now, while development has occurred over the last hundreds of years, that's no longer the case. And so part of this project is to restore some of that functionality of the floodplain and of the natural and beneficial uses that the floodplain provides. In addition, we want to reduce the flood risk downstream in the downstream area of the Duffyfield Canal by delaying some of that flow water on the upstream. Now, I will say, I don't want to overpromise here, because the floodplain that's causing this part of the city is coming from the Neuse River. This project isn't intended to deal with the Neuse River itself. More of the minor flooding and the flooding you see on a more frequent basis, not like the hurricane influence of the flooding. And also want to make sure you're improving the use of the recreational fields and other facilities in the park. Again, this is a community facility. We want to make sure it's meeting your needs and make sure that the facilities are there for you to use when possible. One probably noticed, and I had some residents already mention it to me again, is that it's wet a lot of times, right? It's soggy and boggy, and it's not useful. And we want to come up with some ideas on how we can fix that. And then finally, we want to make sure we preserve the history and the feel of this as a community asset. My community example from my own life, I live about a block or two away from a park in my neighborhood in Raleigh, and my kids love going there. It's called White Oak Park. They love going there a couple times a week probably. And a couple weeks ago, they changed the name of the park to Ed Earhart Park. It was after some city councilman or something, I don't know who it was. My kids got really upset about it. They said, "Dad, that's not the park. We're never going to call it that. We're always going to call it White Oak Park." And I realized, when you have a place that's important to you and your family, like it's generational, right? It passes on from one generation to the next. And so we'll make sure we're preserving that for future generations that come on board. So can I talk a little bit about the park itself? I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, at least in part. There are several sports fields. There's a basketball court, there's a baseball field, a softball field, there's a playground, and there's a walking trail that goes around it as well. And we're going to kind of go into that a little bit more. So you can see here's a map. This is the same map you probably saw as you walked in the middle over here. Softball field over in the northeast, baseball field over in the southwest, playgrounds, pavilions, an old tennis court that looks like it's no longer in use. Some basketball courts that are a little bit kind of sinking down a little bit unusable over here. And then around this side of the site, there's an existing drainage canal that drains into the Duffyfield Canal that comes along this way.
Please speak up a little, please.
Sure. I'll sorry, I'm talking to the board, not to you. I apologize for that. Just some natural vegetation over in this area over here. And then what this slide is intending to show is the topography or the elevation on the site itself. If there is a ground over here on the right, or a little bit higher in elevation, like this is the parking lot area. There is in light green and then into the dark green and blue are the lower areas. And typically what you see in this is the lower areas are going to be more wet. There's an existing layer of what the groundwater is, and in certain areas of the park you can actually see the groundwater starting to peak up above the ground. And so that's part of what we want to do is how can we work with that? We can't pump the groundwater out so it's not there ever again, because we have to work with it. But how can we live with it, and how can we make it part of the park experience and incorporate it into what we're doing? And finally, what are some of the physical constraints of the park itself? Well, first of all, this area is within the Duffy Canal watershed, right? It's kind of like the bus station for the Duffy Canal watershed. There's a couple different smaller watersheds that are draining right into the park, and then it shoots out the Duffyfield Canal. And so as part of this, kind of the headwaters of the Duffyfield Canal, we want to make sure that we're kind of using this appropriately to store water, to move water, to filter water, and push it kind of downstream. And it is prone to frequent flooding, obviously from the 100-year floods and from very large events that occur infrequently, but also some from smaller events, right? When you get a little bit heavier rainstorms and it floods in different areas of that. So recognizing how that impacts the uses of the park, I think is important. And this map is just a kind of a depiction of the drainage areas coming into the park. Now we didn't include the offsite areas as well, but these extend way out into the community as well. But the size of the arrows is kind of relative to the size of the drainage area coming into it. So you kind of see from the southwest, there are smaller drainage areas coming in. From the southeast, there's a significant amount of flow coming in this way into the southeast part of the park. There's a couple drainage basins there that they capture and collect the flow, and then push it over to the canal on this side, and then over to the Duffyfield canal over here. And there's actually a pretty large drainage area starting from the Rose Street and the railroad that comes down and drains over into the park from this side as well. I'm sure you've noticed this area over here is probably wet pretty frequently. There's a little pedestrian bridge that crosses over the really wet part. That's because there's a lot of area draining right through that area. And so one of the thoughts we have is how can we work with that instead of working against it. And so we'll get into that a little bit more during the meeting today. And then this is just the other board you probably saw as you walked in, just kind of the overall setting with how the drainage areas work together, where the flow goes, and how the park kind of sits in this overall part of the parcel. And what I want to say about that is it's what we do here is just one part of a much larger picture, right? And we're zooming in and we're looking at one project, but it's one important project. We really recognize the importance of it and want to make sure we do it right. So we're here to listen to you today and see what thoughts you have on this. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Don York for.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so if the Rose Street Canal runs to the park, isn't the city planning to do something with the Rose Street Canal? So is that more water that's going to be coming to the park, or is that going to be running the opposite way?
Yeah. Sure.
Well, I was going to say, I'd love to pass it on to the city, but I do know that there is some work in progress at the Rose Street pump station, that they are doing some improvements and to expand the pond area downstream. So Duffyfield Canal itself, there is a phased approach at evaluating how to improve flood risk and just move water downstream and also pump it into different areas. So again, as Jeff mentioned, this is the headwaters of Duffyfield Canal, and we're really trying to evaluate where is water coming from and how is it moving, and we'll probably get into the next phase into some additional work to look at sort of modeling the water and how it's moving, and we might be able to answer that question a little bit more. But
yeah, with the Rose Street stuff, there is some expansions on that stuff to include the Duffyfield Stormwater Enhancement Project, which is going to be like they're probably going to be used as sort of like green space, sort of like the Jack Smith Park, where it's going to be utilize some of the green spaces we have there, just doing like a retention pond, a marsh, or equivalent of like a retention pond similar to the Jack Smith Creek.
This isn't exactly Henderson Park either, but if I come into Duffyfield from Simmons and then onto Hazel, that's not Duffyfield right there, but there are a lot of swales along the roads, and I didn't know what a swale was. It's like a shallow ditch that water drains into from the road. I mean, I live in Trent Woods. There's swales all over my neighborhood, so there's never water standing on the road. It's going into that swale. Any possibility that swales are parts of Duffyfield?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we were talking about that just a few minutes ago. How these they're basically kind of natural drainage channel is what a swell is, as opposed to like a concrete channel that's kind of ugly and breaks down a lot.
Yeah,
like
it's just grass.
It's grassy or some sort of vegetation that kind of has a natural flow to it. And I think that's definitely part of what we'll probably end up with here is that.
And just another thing, again, it's not exactly Henderson Park, but I've seen kids or adults shoot hoops there. I've never been there when they were playing baseball or what do they call themselves, softball.
Yeah.
But I wonder, and maybe Parks and Recs is going to put up like some soccer goals or something. Not that it would be usable all of the time, but I'm just thinking this summer, without having Stanley White, what are kids in Duffyfield going to do for outdoor recreation? I know the K Street Garden isn't going to be there anymore because of possible flooding and turning that into maybe more of a wetland area, I think, where G and K Street are. But, for the summer, some kind of outdoor recreation for kids would be good.
That's great thoughts. Yeah.
and we would love for you to write down that input or provide it in some way with our interactive sessions. We want that kind of feedback because again, we don't know. Again, Jeff mentioned, I live in Wilmington. And I do not live here, so I don't know, how often softball and baseball fields are utilized. Is there a league? How often do they play? Are they hampered, like the schedule hampered by flooding? What does that look like? And, are there other possibilities, to do something with the field, turn it into something, as you mentioned, maybe something a little bit more flexible that can have temporary goals or something like that. So that's feedback we're looking for.
I think, and if my memory is right, one part of Henderson Park is like pavement. And is there a chance that could be like elevated into something and maybe turned green instead of just having pavement there?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but if you do that, then you're gonna take away from what the city has already done with the basketball court. So what they did is where Stanley Wright actually was, they've turned that into a basketball court. All right, and then parts of that also is supposed to be put down like shuffleboard and different type of outdoor games that's supposed to happen in that area. Then you have the parking lot itself. Okay, so if I would think that if you would take those areas and turn them into green spaces, now you've really created a bigger problem because now A, you don't have parking, B, what are the kids gonna do now if everything's a green space? But see, it's the water flow. One of the biggest problems I see is the water flow down 3rd Avenue that goes directly into Henderson Park.
Right.
And it doesn't drain properly. It doesn't go to the canal.
It gets stuck there, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
So just to address, and I see Carrie's here, thank you for coming, Parks and Rec, and we had a conversation just a couple weeks ago about the plans for Parks and Rec to improve the amenities and the basketball court. And our intent, this area here, there you go. Yeah, so this red box and even this area here is not part of our proposed area that we're going to touch. So we don't want to conflict with anything the Parks and Rec Department already has in place for these amenities.
Well, Parks and Rec is expanded from that because the shelters and everything are off to the left of the red box.
Okay.
Okay, so you got bathrooms are supposed to be put out there, and then you have, right now, it's 2 shelters if I'm not mistaken, and there's supposed to be a 3rd one added out there for picnic there. I know this because I'm on that board.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Well, and
So-
absolutely, we would love to understand, what is the constraining box here that we need to stay outside of due to already, the proposed plans for improvements. We want to avoid any kind of
Well,
duplication.
I think you guys need to work on the outside of Henderson Park. Yes, where the red lines are.
And as far as the comment about the pavement, I guess Larry, I was thinking when she said that was actually the tennis court, the old tennis courts up the top up there. I don't think are used for anything. There's this kind of broken down
No,
pavement.
it's not currently being used.
Yeah.
There's only a small area that is still there. It's where the Veterans Garden previously was.
So I was thinking that there's probably an area where we could probably do something to make it more usable or something.
We went in there last year and cleaned up a lot of stuff and removed some debris out of that area.
But it is possible, to remove that and do something with it.
But it doesn't look like that now. Okay, it's not that big.
Okay. Well,
It's
not-
probably a quarter of that size,
Okay.
if that.
Okay. All right. I appreciate your questions. Keep asking. This is an informal meeting, so. All right, so I just wanted to cover public outreach. I mean, you guys, again, really appreciate your time that you've taken to attend. I know that we all have busy schedules, it's dinner time, and you need to get home and make dinner. But I just wanted to also note, you are in the community, you are the community. Please, talk to your neighbors, let them know that there's a survey, there's a website. We will post the presentation on the website for other folks to see. We'd be happy to take phone calls or email. We will be coming back to provide additional information to the Redevelopment Commission And I understand there's also the Duffyfield Residents Council meeting that will be coming up. We would love to provide additional information at those meetings and also provide additional feedback at that point as well. We do again have the project website, and hopefully some of you have seen the Facebook ad that's been put out. Hopefully that has garnered some attention, and that is our way to reach out to the public and then to the community. If there are other ways and other ideas that you have that you think may be best to get out to different folks, we would love to hear that. So again, thank you for coming today. This is a little difficult to hear or to see, to read, but these are some of the survey results that we've received so far. And these are just different thoughts and comments. But again, I think some of the key takeaways is that residents feel that Henderson Park is extremely important as a cultural resource and amenity. 67% have said the park is a nice neighborhood feature. However, it's prone to flooding and could benefit from improvements. So let's figure out how to do that. 62% so far don't live in the Duffyfield community. However, 38% do live here. So there's definitely some insight into people that live right around the neighborhood. Different people living in different times. Some people drive, some people walk. We want to understand connectivity. How do people access the site? We were just there a couple hours ago. We saw several folks riding their bikes through. So that really helps us understand, what are some of the constraints to people to get it to the site and how do they use it. How much time do people use the park? Again, going back to the ball fields, you've said that you haven't seen many people play there, but there are reasons for that. We want to understand that. 60% of folks have said that they do use the trails. However, only 33% use the actual workout course or the playground. What can we do to help improve that? 20% use the ball fields or the basketball courts. Again, there are reasons behind that. And there's more information again about walking trails, the festivals and events that may occur around Henderson Park, like Duff Fest is coming up in a couple of weeks. And also, how many people come and have their children play at the playground. Just a little bit more, again, going back to connectivity. Do people walk through the park to get to the hospital? Do people go to adjoining neighborhoods through the park? How do you access, and also how do you feel about the trail system? Do you like the way that it's looped? Do you want to see it in a different way? Do you prefer a natural or paved trail? Some folks, 87%, are very concerned about flooding impacts. Again, that's going to be one of our key areas of focus. How can we improve that? 100% are supportive of reducing flood risk to downstream properties. That's obviously very, very important to the Duffyfield neighborhood, given all of the impacts from Florence and other storm events. So we're very interested in understanding how the flooding impacts people. 87% are very supportive of supporting recreational activities. We don't want to turn this park into something else. We want to improve the use of the recreational activities. How do we want the children to play? What types of sports? 73% are very supportive of using nature-based infrastructure solutions. Jeff mentioned the swales, using native plants. Can we plant more trees to uptake the additional water? What can we do to help offset, again, some of the drainage, the flooding, the really high groundwater? Other concerns are talking about the canal system itself, the lighting. What type of lighting do you want to see around the park? Are there safety concerns around the park that we can use lighting to improve that? Also looking at maybe some type of online application or something that you can download on your phone to be able to report activities to the city, to be able to gain access to city staff more quickly about potential problems. So initial concept, you'll see over here, we have a couple of boards set up. Jeff mentioned some of the boards. We'll be stationed at each of the boards, but one in particular, we pulled together various imagery for you to select. It's basically an if or if you like both. And this is really for us to be able to kind of gain insight into your preferences. Do you like paved or natural pathways? Again, going back to the type of sports, would you like to see more of an active baseball field? Or would you like to see sort of an open field, maybe again with movable goals and something that people can play frisbee or soccer? These are choices that you have that we can help move down into the concept phase of the design. So these are different options for you to choose from, and we're going to have basically a sheet for you to just kind of check, which one do you like? And then we will gather all of that information and put it into what we're calling kind of our concept plan. And that concept plan is what we would like to bring to the Duffyfield Residents Council, to the board, to staff, and really provide input from folks to understand, okay, we like this, we don't like this isn't going to work because of X, Y, Z. This is where we are. We're very early on in this process, and so we're at a good stage to provide all of that input. Again, back to different loop systems, whether or not, how do you want to walk around the park? What are the basketball fields? Are they elevated to reduce flooding? Are they sunken so that you provide additional storage and that water then drains out? There are different features that we can include. Art, public art. I understand that this area is extremely important to the community. There's potential exhibits, temporary permanent art features that could help honor either the people that have lived in this community or have passed, or various features that you want to showcase. Maybe bring in school systems, provide ideas for them. Again, going back to the lighting, what types of lighting do you like? Landscaping, really wanting to focus on using native plants to help uptake that additional water. They do really well with low maintenance. Looking at different events that you have and ways that we can utilize the space to help improve gathering. Allow folks to come in the picnic area. Absolutely, it's extremely important to bring families and having that space available. Educational signage. What are the types of messages that the residents want to see? Is it storytelling? Is it a story that we can tell through signage along a pathway about the history of the community? There may be other types of stories. Different types of connection with the water. How close do we want to be? Do we want to have maybe something overhanging, a boardwalk, something that's elevated? Or do you want to walk and have plants kind of immersed and feel part of nature? Natural versus sort of an engineered channel design. Jeff mentioned that about the drainage way around the park. How do we want to improve that system so we can, again, move that water quickly farther away from the site? So again, next steps. I mentioned there is a website. I do have a laptop over there that does have the website on it. This is an interactive map that you can actually pull these little icons here to document where you want to see improvements. You can document where you might want to see an amenity improvement, such as a gazebo. There may be a flood concern in a specific location. You can pull these and actively put them here, and they get saved onto the website, and that's information that we can use for the concept design plan. There's the engagement opportunity. You guys have all done a great job of making our job easier, of attending and providing feedback and input. Again, thank you so much for coming. There is a survey online. There's also hard copies here at the table. We want your input. It's about a 12-question survey. Hopefully it doesn't take more than about 5-7 minutes of your time. Again, it's very important for us to understand how you use the site and what's important to you. That survey does close, I think, in about a week or so. Again, we do have Facebook, we have an email address, and we have the website. We are also planning to attend Duff Fest and look forward to seeing more people there. We will have the boards. If there's thoughts and ideas or feedback about how we can better participate in Duff Fest, we'd love to hear that. So just to get into sort of the next step, you guys are going to be free to move out of your seats. We will have, again, these 3 boards. Each board has a different sort of goal in mind. One board, Jeff Crump will be at to discuss sort of the hydrology what type of different stormwater features or green infrastructure features, where are some of the flooding concerns. Jeff will be at this first board. Adriana back here will be at this imagery board where she is going to have a sheet of paper where you can check one box or another. You know, whether you liked one lighting type or another. It's kind of a if or. And basically that should go really quick for you as to your preference if you're using the park. And then this other board here is very similar to what's on the website, where it's interactive, where you can document any concerns from flooding, where you want to see an amenity, where you feel like something else could be done. And then we're going to have little sticky notes. You can put a little comment on it, put the sticky note on the board. We will take a picture and document that, and that will go into our planning of the concepts. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I know you all plan on doing fielding for the holes and stuff in Henderson Park, but the stuff that you use to fill it in, could you make it more absorbent so that the water won't just sit up, that it absorb more, they got use of like sand and little rocks and stuff to make it, so that you can walk on it together and when it get wet, it can sink down in it.
Are you talking about the fields?
Yes.
Okay, like the baseball
Yeah, the
field.
field and anywhere around, that the water stands, even though they're by the shelter, anywhere around there. But, just, cause you use like sand and little rocks, and it'll still be absorbent, but you can walk on top of it better than you have to sit.
Right,
Instead
right.
of the mucky clay that's there right now, yeah. That's good, that's a good thought, yeah.
Okay, thank you. We can just look into different material types for the pathway and other such.
So is this a time where we are going to discuss, like the solutions that you guys have in mind, or so is that what this is? We can say that now.
You absolutely, if you have ideas, we're willing to listen. We haven't put pen to paper.
Okay.
So we haven't designed anything. We have ideas based on our site visit, based on knowledge of available data that's worked in other places. We have other projects that have been designed in other locations that we can pull information from, what's worked, what hasn't worked, do the research and understand, what is the best use of this type of facility.
Okay. And I'm interested to hear what residents have to say. I'm a resident as well on Mechanic Street, but the site right now is just, it does need stormwater mitigation. But in my opinion, I don't see how without bringing it up past the flood level, like putting land in to raise it, that the use of it we're going to get the use that it is now. We're not going to be able to use it as a ball field. We're not going to be able to use it as a soccer field or anything if we don't do something with the storm water. But it's like the percentage of the land needed to be used to mitigate the storm water is going to be considerable, isn't that?
Right. There's a couple of really good points there. One thought I've had is raising those fields up, right, so that they are above the groundwater level, because that's really what's impacting, like on a long-term basis, like how wet it is, because it's so low relative to the downstream flows to the Neuse River itself, to the tidal conditions and all that. Right. By raising it up, it allows it to dry out faster. And I think you bring up a great point about materials and making sure that the materials themselves can drain better and better degrees. So I think that's one part of it. The other piece of it, I think, is a very good point you had, is about the stormwater mitigation itself. How do we handle all the flows coming into the site from the various areas around the community? How do we handle those and pass them through while still maintaining usage for the features on site? And I think that's part of this plan that we're coming up with. I think it was you sort of mentioned like doing work on the outside of the park to make sure we can use the inside of the park.
I think thinking about what you just said, Henderson Park we're gonna have to look at Henderson Park like it's a golf course.
Yeah, that's a great
Okay, and how when it rains on a golf course, the water doesn't sit.
Right.
The drainage on a golf course is set up to where it drains away from the greens, or it drains away from the green grass area.
Yeah.
And it's
Okay.
so
So just let me interject right there, sir, because right now that's not possible.
it is if you gotta think outside the box. What happened was Henderson Park, what I've been told, Henderson Park was built on a dump. It was a garbage area that was built up to make a park. So the drainage wasn't put there to start with. So if we fix it, before we fix it, we need to put the drains down, then fix the park.
Okay.
Okay? You're gonna have to start, really, in my mind, you're gonna have to start at the beginning. Okay? And put the drainage in, then put the dirt down so it'll flow. So you have to look at it like you're building a golf course. How does a golf course drain? You have to look at that concept and put that concept into Henderson Park, and it'll work.
So, but that seems like so right now, if we were to do a mitigation drainage system like that, like on a golf course, we're at ground level, so it would have to be done there, and then we'd have to put land on top of it.
Potentially, yeah. Potentially, there might be some fill brought in to raise up the elevation, so it's above kind of the groundwater level. It's a possibility.
Okay, but I like the idea you guys said about using natural means to do that. So that would mean that a solution of drainage, like traditionally a golf course would be built on top of, isn't quite going to work with a natural solution.
And of course, it's used natural solutions also.
And I guess maybe there's some terminology you maybe
Yeah.
disagree with. Like a drainage to me is just anywhere the water goes. Water flows from uphill to downhill. Sometimes that's over land, over grass. Sure, sorry about that, sir. Yeah, so drainage, when I think of drainage, it's like water is going from somewhere uphill to somewhere downhill.
Right.
Yeah, over grass, over a channel, over rocks. It could be in a pipe of some sort or some sort of a conveyance like that. But there's different ways to do that. And I think as engineers, that's our job to come up with the best solution for that. But I think the idea is you have a field that's raised up a little bit, and then the water can flow off of it quickly, so that it dries out quickly. I think that's the concept I'm hearing. Is that right?
Okay, but can we not have a solution where we just relocate Henderson Park?
No.
Well, Stanley White is gonna be relocated. Yeah.
But where Henderson Park is now, in order to incorporate some sort of a system of water mitigation, it seems like we would need a lot of the land mass to do that. So then we would need to relocate the fields.
Okay, Henderson, no, what I understand is that park was donated, that land was donated to be a park.
And it's also paid for with federal grant money, and so it has to remain a park in perpetuity. So it always has to be a park because it was funded with federal funds.
Okay, so then perhaps the usage may not be a ball field or anything like that.
I think that's kind of what we're discussing there. So I don't know if there's.
Yeah.
Think about it a couple of weeks.
Sorry, but go ahead. When you say it would have to be raised a little bit, what do you mean by that?
Sure, that's a great question. You'd like to explain a little bit more. So, can you go to the slide with the topography for me? Don, it's just pulling it up. So right now, if you go out to the site, there's the drainage ditches or canal around the edge of the park, right? You can see where the water's sitting at. We were just out there a few minutes ago, and there's a couple areas where there's holes, right, where you can see the water. You look at the storm drain, and the water's about that far down from the top of the storm drain. So therefore, looking at that, that means that's where the groundwater sits right now. It's only a few inches below the ground at most, right? And that fluctuates seasonally based on rainfall, based on the tidal conditions, based on the storms we've had. It fluctuates. It's not a static condition, but it's pretty high still, right? It's pretty high. It probably doesn't get much lower than it is right now. And so what happens in those, especially the outer areas of the ball fields, they just soak this. Thank you. The area for the ball fields over here, they're just always wet because the groundwater is only a couple inches below. And so when it rains, there's nowhere for that extra water to go. So one thought was to bring in some extra dirt and basically raise that up so that instead of being a couple inches above that groundwater level, it's a foot or two or something like that. I think that's part of what we'd have to figure out what the concept would be. But it'd be higher in elevation than it is right now. And the purpose of that be so it would dry out faster.
And would you be engineering this to mitigate a 500-year flood, a
That's a good question. So the 100-year flood event in this area is from the Neuse River itself, right? And so this project isn't going to deal with that level of flooding. It simply can't be that height above it. But the more frequent floods, the 2-year, the 10-year, the 25-year, those that occur on a more frequent basis, I think that's kind of what we'd be looking at to handle. But like the hurricane level events, it's we don't have this one project isn't able to deal with that. It's a good question though.
Any chance that maybe the Public Works Stormwater Department could go around those areas and dig them out deeper or wider, or?
That's a great thought. We actually showed the same thought earlier. You know, the way that we can improve those channels, you make them wider or deeper, maybe lay the banks back a little bit so they have a little bit more room to take some flows in. One concept we talked about was making a kind of meandering channel with a little larger floodplain overbank, so that during normal conditions there's a small stream of water, but then when the rains do come, it can kind of raise up and flood the overbank area, and then it kind of recedes again. So it kind of uses a dual purpose of that.
And then there's the use of those rip-rap rocks on the edges to slow down the flow of water?
Yeah, it depends on what we want to do with that. Those are usually used to mitigate for erosion purposes when you have higher velocities or when you have steep banks. So they may or may not be what we need in this case. Maybe vegetation could work to maintain that, but it's good thoughts there.
So would you be looking at the canal? Is that canal that's going on there?
Yeah, there's a canal going from here all the way over here and then into here. Yeah.
So possibly the wide that, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, maybe lay that back, maybe widen that a little bit more so it's got a little more room to function.
So I'm just, and I guess I'd like to see if anybody else thinks this, but if this is a solution that's going to help with the flooding of the entire neighborhood, is this solution going to help with all of our flooding?
It's a loaded question.
The intent is for it to be a cumulative part of the entire phase of what the city wants to do at Duffyfield Canal. I think there are multiple designs and thoughts around doing different projects. This is just one that could help reduce flood risk downstream and help store a little bit more water before it's released. So it's just one part of the overarching phase of what the city wants to do around Duffyfield Canal.
Okay. Because I'm interested in, if we have to sacrifice some of the usage of the park in order for all of our living conditions to be improved, for us to see less flooding of our homes and our properties, then I am willing, and I guess I'm just trying to see what everybody else thinks, I'm willing to make that sacrifice.
Right. There's a trade-off right there. There's a trade-off for sure. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? Anybody have any?
I think we got a lot of projects that are going on over there right now, and again, like you said, this is just one of them. The conversation about expanding the
Rose Street Canal.
Yeah, not the canal, but you don't realize only about half of that belongs to the park. The other half actually belongs to residents on the other side. So that's private property that the city has you have to buy everybody's property to do anything there. And raising property, but when you raise property on this side, the problem is the water has nowhere to go. So that's what all these projects are doing, like what I was saying, like the Duffyfield Stormwater Enhancement Project, is laying down some areas where the water can actually sit until we can get the Rose Street pumps and other pumps to pump it out, because when it's flooded on this side, this area just happens to be one of the lowest areas in the city, so water's coming from everywhere. It's not just in your part of the community. This is where everything's flowing, so if you build up something, the water's still going to be in the same area, it's just going to move to a different area exactly. So it's just going to, if we build up the park, that water's still going to be in the area, so it's going to go to someone else's yard. Right. So the solution right now is to find ways to pump it out, but when we're pumping it out of one area, we can't pump it over into another area, because the water's normally, during those rainstorms, are flooding other areas. So it's sort of like take one from and give it to another, but you're just going to have to try to manage it with the different pumps and getting some of it over into the river at the same time. So it's not that you can just build up and then that solves the problem, becomes a problem.
But so to me, that's why I was willing to sacrifice, time. But to do a more natural solution and work with the land as it is.
Sure.
And to me, it seems like that's gonna take up the
Right.
ball field.
Yeah, so maybe explain that concept a little better. So one thought was, one thought was, so for example, if it's important for this ball field to move, right, we can raise this up a little bit, but then I think to your point, you'd have to make some room for to accommodate what we've taken out of the floodplain, right? So you have to make an compensatory, cut through here to allow that water to go through around here. So basically, we're saving portions of the park, or improving portions of the park, and allowing drainage in other portions of the park. So it's kind of back to your golf course concept. That's actually a pretty good analogy, right? Because the golf course does have like contours, and it's got water hazards, and it's got different things that's part of it. I think that would be one concept that we could think about. Like, is there a way we could make some parts more usable by making some parts more natural and more wet? That trade-off.
Well, part of the solution would be the Indigo place on Third Avenue and Cedar Street. It sits high, and all the water from it drains right down to Henderson Park. So if we can find a solution for that water to drain off there to go somewhere else instead of Henderson Park, that's part of the solution.
Right. That's. I mean, to the earlier point, this is the kind of the central portion where a lot of this area's drainage comes right into here, and so we got to figure out how to handle that, move it through and around, and hopefully still protect some of the usage of the park.
And yes, sir, I want to go back. I'm really interested in the history. You mentioned it used to be sort of a landfill.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
What year did it get converted?
I think starting right, if I'm not mistaken, but Barbara probably knows better. I believe it was built in 1976, so prior to that, it was a landfill. Okay, all through the 50s and 60s, well, Bernard should know.
Bernard and the he's not right there, around that time, yeah.
The whole area was a landfill?
Henderson Park was.
Yeah,
What
Henderson
I
Park
recall.
It used to be sand and all that stuff that we used to play on.
Near the Indigo place, that's where they had sand hills and stuff. We used to go there and do the slide all down the sand and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sir, you had a comment?
Yes, one thing about that area since I was born and raised there. What you call a canal was actually a natural brook. It was a natural stream. And it drained the whole area. You're right. That sits down in a bowl. But there's been other plans to widen that canal, that stream, so that it goes back to its natural flow, and to make it a community amenity instead of a nuisance. I like the idea of the golf course. On a golf course, you don't find a canal full of trash. On a golf course, what you find is a nicely landscaped area that flows. The water is not stagnant. And that's what we need to have happen here. And we need to forget about cost, because the area needs investment, just like the rest of the city has had. And, the park, you mentioned the park being moved. Well, it's been moved already. Stanley White is located 600 to 800 feet up on Broad Street now. That was the center of the community. So what are you investing in it? That's why I'm here tonight, to find out. What are you going to invest in that community that's over 150 years old? What are you going to invest in that?
Well, I would think,
My community.
I would like to see something happen to the drainage, to the stormwater.
Yeah,
Let's see it.
but if it flows, if we can get it back to its natural flow, it's going to flow out to the News River.
Now, was a lot of this, and you would know, wasn't a lot of this mitigated when the quarries were functional? Then when they shut down, that's when a lot of these problems began, because this was normally wasn't dry until they dug those out there. Is that correct? From the water?
That's true. The quarry had a lot to do with lowering the water table so the
Right.
water drained faster. But the area has always flooded. Prior to a landfill, it was a wetland. It was donated to the city. The city decided to improve it. They went the cheap way because it's in the black community. They brought in that cheap landfill stuff as such that Stanley White, the building itself sinks. That's what they talked about. The land is unstable. Okay, so you got a problem. Are you going to continue that problem? Or are you going to correct it? Because eventually something needs to be done. It needs to be done properly. You're an engineer.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got some ideas, right?
Hope so. Yeah. No, it's a great point. If the land is historically a wetland, it's not stable. Like this, you can't put stuff on
It
there.
would be useful for a softball field.
Yeah, but see,
What I envision is a canoe trail going out to the Neuse River, where people can come along that trail, visit the community, there's amenities, food, sales, etc., and go into the park and enjoy themselves.
you can't,
Boardwalk,
the park has to stay a park.
fishing.
I mean, but I understand that, but perhaps it doesn't have to be a baseball field at the park.
All I said was, it has to stay a park.
I'm not.
I didn't say that to be a baseball field.
Okay.
Other people brought up that. I said that by law, it has to stay a park. A park, it could be many things as a park.
Yeah.
Okay? You could put a 3-hole golf, you could put 6 3-hole golf courses out there, and it's a park.
Okay.
Okay?
I mean,
It can be the
Benches and chairs out there.
It's a park.
so we don't mind.
No.
We don't mind.
We're not, you're the one in the box saying we need to get rid of the baseball field. None of us have said it. They're not playing baseball out there. Reason why they're not playing baseball out there? No. Because Stanley White's not there.
Right.
And then by the building not being there, now, see, the building is out of the community, like Bernard just said. That was the center of that area. Okay? That's how the kids got there. Guys like me see them hanging around. Yo, we're gonna put you on the baseball team, we're gonna put you on the football team, whatever. The football team practice out there, the baseball team practice out there, or the cheerleaders, right. But if the building is not there, that was the center of that community. Now it's just a park.
Okay. And so I guess I just wanted to see if there was a consensus as to the shift of usage, since we have to work with the land. I mean, I was just trying to say that I'm okay with it not being a ball field or anything like that, if that's more conducive to the solution of the drainage, the mitigation of the stormwater. But it seems like you guys are like, no, we want to keep it to be a ball field. We don't want anything.
I think it's going to have to, as far as the rest, I think it's going to have to be a comprehensive solution, meaning we're not going to preserve all of the park. We're not going to lose all of the park.
Right.
Some of it will have to be amended to fit the purposes of the resiliency piece as far as the drainage and so on and so on. So what I'm envisioning is that some component of it may have to be some type of retention basin, retention pond or whatever. The discussion is going to be, where does that go? And what do we lose in place of that? You see what I'm saying? So there's going to be some trade-offs. It's not going to be all or nothing, but the solution has to be comprehensive. We have to be willing to exchange some land for
the mitigation.
For some mitigation.
Right. I think our biggest problem is, or our biggest thing is, we don't want it turned into just a water hole.
Right.
We want to be able to use it. I mean, I asked, hey, why couldn't we build a garage out there where people could rent and have family reunions out there and roll up the doors so you can't have buildings out there. You can't have walls because it was in the floodplain. Well, Greenville has the same problem we have. It's just not in the neighborhood, it's on the water. They built a building. It's probably 100 by 100, and it has roll-up doors, and they use 4x4s. And they have chairs and tables out there.
people can rent and they can have, you know, you can sell stuff and it's right on the water. That was what I brought to the city on that, because I said if it happened in Greenville, why can't we do it here? You can do it over there. And now you have people that's accessing the park using it more frequently.
Were those FEMA lots in Greenville? Because that makes a difference.
Right, that's all. So it was FEMA monies can't.
Yeah, FEMA,
I
you can't
believe
build
it was.
it.
I believe it was FEMA because it kept flooding, but I didn't research enough on that. I just seen that they did it on the lake, and I knew that it kept flooding over there. So, but it's things that we could do, like Jamal said, is we're going to have to give up something to get something. We know that. But it's the problem that the city has ignored that area for so long. Now all of a sudden, it's a big problem. We all see it.
Yeah.
And we got to come up with a solution.
And
today, not tomorrow.
What we would say, I mean, and I agree 100% with what you all are saying, but the problem is you have to mitigate the flooding first. And we have Margaret here, and she'll tell you how many millions of dollars that we have in grants right now to try to mitigate the water, which is where, I mean, we probably have more grants in this area trying to mitigate the water. And until you get that done, you can't have any investments on here because no one's going to invest in basically flood property.
And to me, I don't think it's a trade-off. I think that is, yeah, that's what we want. You know, I don't think it's like a give-lose. I think with a win, we're winning here.
So win-win, but I mean, what I mean by lose, meaning losing area, losing some component of what we see now. Okay. You see what I'm saying? To something like a drainage part of it. The only caveat I'll put on that to say to you guys is that the emphasis of the community is going to want to preserve as much recreational space as possible, regardless of the project. You know, that's going to be the thing. You know, we understand, you know, what has to be done, but we also need to preserve as much recreational space as possible.
And by that, you specifically like playing sports or something?
Ball fields.
If you want to play some baseball or softball, you know, you preserve some of it, you know.
But it's not exclusive to not entertaining some things like, but no, something innovative as far as fishing ponds or canoe paths. So we got to think outside the box as far as what the possibilities are going to be, and that can be, you know, that could be whatever we can imagine. You see what I'm saying? So it doesn't have to be a traditional solution. It just needs to be a solution.
Right. And I think Bernard, excuse me, I'm sorry. Bernard had a great idea. The canoe path would be an outstanding idea. Now you widen the canal and you can use it as a flying tool. And it goes to the news. So
that will help with the mitigation of the water.
Yes.
Because that's the main problem. Who's going to invest in our area?
Right.
If we have a
I think widening the canals. I think we got to start somewhere, right? And that would be seems like the first thing first. That's why I said concentrate on the outside. If we widen the canal, you know, let's see how that works. And if that helps, then that's a start.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
That's good feedback, yeah.
Yeah, and then, I mean, Bernard had that's a great idea. You make that a canoe path, going to the news, now it's a learning tool.
And the ecology becomes an asset. So we have a tremendous ecology here that has to be sustained and has to be high functioning, even with improvements. And there's a balance, and that's what y'all will find.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I mean, we don't want to go in here and put a bunch of concrete channels out there. That's not the intent of this. Right. It's to be something that's sustainable from a natural and ecological perspective, as well as an engineering perspective. So it's got that balance.
No, when I say with the concrete walls and stuff, they sink because where I live, there is a, whatever y'all call it, canal or whatever.
Yeah.
It's taking my land. So yeah,
You live right on the canal, right next to it.
Not quite, no, not. I'm a couple streets off of it, but you still have the water coming through there, and there's a canal there. And so it was a brick wall. Now that wall has fallen in. And so now,
Your backyard's kind of full.
right, my land, whenever that ditch flood, it comes over and saturates the ground. So now it's taking my land.
soil erosion.
The city can keep it up. I mean, let's call it what it is. The city can do their job. Now, we at this point where it was a Band-Aid put on it, now we gotta do major surgery.
That's right.
Okay? And we gotta do, not only do we have to do major surgery, we gotta do major surgery. Okay? Just to keep a neighborhood in the park. That's what we're gonna have to do.
And it's being done over time.
Yeah, we understand that it can't be done all right.
This
But
is
we
a
gotta
start.
start somewhere.
This is a start, you know.
This is just one part of
Yeah,
much
this is like a phase
larger.
1, you know, I know it's phase 1, they got phase 2, they got phase 3, I know they already got all these phases in place, I already know this.
Right.
So they know. They
I don't want it to be too many phases, but you know, like, we are in our 60s.
Hey, for the younger people. They all the for the younger people.
I like to see it change, you know. I like to see some of it.
This is a start.
We gonna
This
see
is a
phase
start.
one.
You guys being here, it's a start. Providing feedback, it's a start. You gotta start
The
somewhere.
canal idea is one of the best ones.
What's that?
The canal, what Bernard said about the canals.
Yeah, I
Widen
really like that.
the canals, and we can use them as a community trails.
Well, listen, there are 3 boards over here that are carpeting, so please feel free to grab. Each of us will be over here. Take your time, just walk through, provide some feedback. Take a survey if you haven't already, and thank you guys again for coming and providing feedback.
Thank you all for coming too.